Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our final webinar of our 2021 Volunteer Management Webinar Series. I can't believe that we've done 12 of these over the year. I hope you all have found it beneficial. I got some really great feedback, so I'm thinking it's all going well. And as I look through the participant list, I think we have some people who've attended every single webinar in the series, so I can't express enough, and I'm sure I'll thank you many, many more times as we go. But to kind of wrap up the year, today we're going to be talking about promoting our programs and our volunteer successes. So my name is Sydney Chatreau. I am the Director of Volunteer Engagement at the Tennessee Commission on Aging and Disability. I like to give the disclaimer that I am not a volunteer expert, so I am actively working on it every month. While I do these webinars, I love doing the research. I love learning your all's experience and getting some more experience on my own and learning some best practices. So anything that we talk about on these webinars are suggestions. So you are not required to implement any of these things that we talk about on the webinars. If you do want to implement anything that we discuss, I encourage you to work with your supervisors and managers to make sure everything is done correctly and through the policies at your agency. So these are all just best practices. Do with the information what you will. We like to start every month with a volunteer recruitment tip, since that's one of the most popular areas of volunteer engagement that we've had from surveys and things. So this month, I'm sure everyone has heard about, take your child to work day or similar themes like that growing up. But it could be a possible fun way to introduce new volunteers to your organization is to do a recruitment theme day, or maybe a few times a year, maybe once a year. It'll take definitely more planning to be sure that there's enough work to be done if a large group is to be recruited or is interested. Or you may want to consider putting, a limit on the number of people for these recruitment days, so you make sure everyone has something to do and no one's bored, and you lose a potential recruit from that. So things like bring a friend or a spouse to volunteer day is a way to have current volunteers help with recruitment efforts. Bring a child or grandchild to volunteer day can help with possible retention, as well as getting a possible new generation excited about volunteering. The only caution I would have to the bring your child, grandchild, is to make sure that there's age-appropriate activities. Could be a challenge. So again, planning is going to be critical to the success. But maybe there's something like a craft station for kids who are under a certain age that can make cards or pictures for members at your center, or maybe for people on a meal route, maybe around the holidays or something along those lines. Do you need help counting inventory? Maybe you have a bunch of flyers or a bunch of puzzles or books, and you kind of want to get a good inventory, and kids are learning how to count, and maybe you can help them with that and have them help you with inventory. Stuffing envelopes, maybe you do a monthly newsletter that you mail out, and you can have some people of a younger age help with stuffing envelopes, or any kind of outdoor or indoor cleaning you may have could be something fun for a younger volunteer to do. Many high school and college students are looking for community service activities for school, or maybe a scholarship. So maybe there's an opportunity there to develop a special project or get something that you've been putting on the back burner or on the bottom of your to-do list. You just can't ever seem to have time to get this one thing done. Maybe there's a group you can find that has a special skill set from a high school or a college to help with that. You can really try the strategy with any group, and I'm not super creative when it comes to coming up with clever names, but for example, if you're trying to reach a faith-based community, maybe something along the line like Congregation Care Day or Week. So really kind of think of these recruitment days as introductions to your program, so you can observe the volunteer skills and possibly find a good fit in a volunteer role that you have established for them that needs to be filled. Worst case scenario, you don't get a long-term volunteer, so you have dozens of people in your community who now know about your program and know about the services that we provide that can share the information in the community. Oh, I totally forgot at the beginning to talk about what we're talking about today. Oh, no, I didn't. I think I said it. Who knows? It's Friday, and it's right before the holidays, so I need to get funky. Yeah, sorry. So we all know, as we talk about promoting our program and volunteer successes, we all remember the 5 W's and the 1 H approach, right? Going back to our elementary school days, we know the who, what, where, when, why, and how. So what we're going to do as we're talking about this is we're going to break the ways to promote your successes into those categories. However, we're going to change up the traditional order. So instead of looking at the who, what, where, when, why, and how, we're going to look at the why, who, what, how, where, and when. Everybody tongue-tied? Everybody confused? Awesome. Let's get started. So I also want to remind everybody that as we're going through this, I do have everyone on mute, so feel free to type in any questions or stories or anything you want to share with the group in the chat box, and I'll be sure to relay those messages on. So first, we're going to start with the why. Of course, there's, the simple explanation of why we want to share our program successes and volunteer successes is to try and recruit more volunteers, make sure everyone knows about the great things that we're doing. But I want to look a little bit deeper into the why, and it's really going to help us go back to the beginning and rediscover our program's history. So question to you guys, and you can type it in the chat box if you'd like, but do you know when your program or organization started? Like, can you type in the chat box the year that your program was established? Some of our new programs are probably easier than some programs that have been around forever. So good, we have some, 1965, we got 2017, perfect. So people do know this, great. Knowing when you started can show how far we've come and how much more we need to do. So are volunteers still doing the same thing that they were doing 25 years ago? Or have roles evolved and changed and maybe even been taken over by paid staff? So as we can go back to, 1991 when Maggie's program started. I apologize, Maggie, I don't know exactly which program you're with, but can you go back to 1991, look at your volunteer roles and see if they're the exact same as they are in 1991 to now? Or maybe has the volunteer role that was back in 1991 been put under a paid staff person because it maybe didn't fit a volunteer well or something along those lines? So take time to go through all the old pictures and articles, electronic files, flyers, brochures, really anything that you can get your hands on, especially for those of us who are relatively new to our positions. I know a lot about many of the programs that I've worked hands-on with, but I know next to nothing about a lot of the others. And I'm here to help recruit volunteers for all the programs, so I really need to catch up on my history lessons. The ideas we've been struggling to come up with, like for recruitment and retention and recognizing our volunteers, we may have the answers, but they're in our past, and we just didn't even know that we had it yet. So I encourage everyone to kind of go back through their history of their programs and their organizations to see if you can find any little treasures. By looking back, we can also see what worked best, kind of those light bulb moments, so to speak, or those silver bullets, I think is another reference that I hear a lot often. Sometimes, or something that had to have gone right in the past at some point for us to still have volunteers and to still have a program and still be able to serve our clients. So what happened and what are those best practices that made things work so well? Was it a particular person, our founder? They were the rock star. Was it a program? Was it a volunteer role, a strategy, a policy, a combination of many things? So go back and see if you know what those best practices are, and see, hopefully, from 1991, if you find a best practice, you've been able to either revamp, continue that best practice, or even improve it as you've gone along. You don't know, what you could find out. I'd be interested if anyone goes back through their history and finds an interesting fact that they didn't know they'd like to share. I'd love to hear about that. And on the flip side of the coin, the things that we did in the past that didn't go quite as planned. Whoopsies. So our lessons learned are keys in not repeating the bad parts of our history. However, I don't want to look at lessons learned as a complete negative. So sometimes our shortcomings or things that didn't work as well just need to be tweaked a little bit or updated or even adjusted to work better. And depending on what the idea was, maybe it didn't work then, back in 1965 for another program, but it could work in 2021. So don't rule anything out completely until you kind of look at it a little bit deeper. So lessons learned don't necessarily mean never again. Again, it may just mean a little bit more planning for success. And now that we've had the opportunity to look back and appreciate where we came from and kind of the roots of how our programs got started, we can start to plan for the future. So we can take a look in our crystal ball, so to speak, and see what we may want to do next year, or maybe get a 5-year plan, make a wish list, brainstorm with staff, volunteers, board members, partners, clients, to develop a collaborative effort to make sure your wishes come true. I'm working on that right now, a wish list for a new grant that we may be applying for. I can't guarantee everything is going to be included, but why not get the input from everyone on what they wish something could be and see what the possibilities could be and what you may discover that could really help your program. So that's a little bit of the why, and a little bit more deeper dive into the why. So who? There's a couple different who's that we're going to look at. So the first one we're going to focus on is the who can help with promoting our program and volunteer success. So before we talk about what we're going to share, we got to figure out our allies who are going to help us shape our stories, who have the actual, are on the front lines of those successes and who can help share our messages. So the first people who are going to be able to help us is the staff, us. We are the gatekeepers. We're going to play the critical role in archiving all of the successes of our program. So hopefully, if you're relatively new to your position, or even if you've been in the position basically before any of your start dates, hopefully the staff that came before you has already preserved some of the good news stories, some of the successes from their time with the program as well. So you're kind of the current archivist. I don't think that's a real word, but you know what's currently going on. Hopefully the staff that came before you is going to know your past. So if they haven't written down those stories or have kind of a book of successes or a place where you can find all those, don't hesitate to reach out to them, even if they've been gone from the organization for a few years. They played a really big part in the organization, and it'd be a good time to, reminisce, and I can promise that they're going to have some memories and stories that they can share with you about their time. Try and keep it on the positive side of the stories. And not, why did you leave? But when you were with us, what were some good stories that came out of your work? I'm sure they'd be willing to share some of those. Volunteers have the most incredible stories because essentially they're on the front lines of the program. I know many of us have talked with our volunteers about the impact that they've had. So they're able to tell us about their personal experience working with the client. And more often than not, the people that we serve share how important the services we provide are to them with our volunteers. Just like staff that have come before us, we need to reach out to volunteers that have left our program for one reason or another. So maybe they retired or moved to another state, but left the program on a positive note. It would be a time to check in on them. Hey, I know you retired a few years ago. How are you enjoying retirement? Were you able to spend some more time with your grandbabies like you wanted to? And then reminisce with them about their experience and their stories from their time at the program. Do you have any pictures from, that really great event that we had at the Senior Center a few years ago? I know you were there with the camera. I just can't find them in our records. Do you have anything like that you'd be willing to send me? Those kind of things. All of us have a governing body, whether that be a board of directors, commission, advisory council, things of that nature. It's important to get their stories as well. So how has serving on the board in their position, whether it be You're just a board member, maybe you have the president or the chair. How has it impacted them? Some boards are definitely more active than other boards. So for those board members that may not be as engaged in a board, I'm sure we've had experiences with those type of board members. Maybe they don't have stories that they can think of off the top of their head. But, you know, as they attend meetings, maybe there was a story that they were told that really stuck out to them that they can remind you about. And you can get kind of their experience that way as well. The people we serve are the best people that we can reach out to, in my opinion. Of course, all these people that I'm recommending are great, but the clients are the ones who can really tell you the stories of why our programs need to exist and how impactful that they can be. So I'm curious, is anyone doing surveys to the people that we serve about our programs and our volunteers? We probably ask them about our services, but do we ask them how they feel the volunteers are doing, providing the services? So type that into the chat box. I'm just curious. And if you don't, that's fine. It's not, you know, a straw poll. You're not getting graded on it. But I just think it'd be interesting if more of our programs did that, particularly not only for the impact of the services, but how the volunteers, if they're doing well, if they're comfortable, that kind of a thing. We're working on this right now with our new Care Through Conversation program that was developed out of COVID-19. And we've gotten a lot of really great responses. So we kind of asked them, are you comfortable talking with your volunteers and things of that nature? And I don't think we've had any person that we've surveyed so far say that they've had a negative experience. It's all been strongly agree with a couple agrees. So that's really, really great. We've had a couple responses come in. We do a survey to our staff each year about the volunteers. That's perfect. So maybe not the patients that you serve, but you definitely want to know from your coworkers how the volunteers are doing. Excellent. We do a satisfaction survey, and one question is asked how comfortable they are with the volunteers and if they feel safe. Excellent. We're required by our grant to complete surveys and see if transportation services provided by one of our volunteers went well. Excellent. Good. I'm glad that some programs are doing that. That's great to see. Definitely something that you can promote for sure. Some other maybe non-traditional places that you can look at for help in the WHO category. Many of us get referrals from elected officials. So I know our agency gets referrals from local and state representatives for us to help their constituents. Have we collected the stories from their office about how we've been able to help them? So, you know, you were really able to help one of our constituents in West Tennessee get a healthy meal every month, or whatever it might be. So really getting the testimonials maybe from an elected official would be a really great way to help promote the program and your successes. I do want to strongly emphasize this and encourage you, if you want to make contact with any elected official office for any reason, make sure you go through the proper channels at your organization. Don't just kind of email Senator Alexander, hey, I heard that our organization helped out one of your people. What's the impact? You know, don't do that. Make sure, I'm sure people at your organization have specific contacts with elected officials, offices, and things. So it may not be something that you can specifically do, but you may be able to work with someone in your office to collect those stories about your program. Also look at similar organizations to ours. So it may be another nonprofit here in Tennessee or a similar agency in other states, and see how they're sharing their stories and who's telling them. So I can imagine our stories would be very similar. Maybe we can even find some inspiration from similar agencies. Don't steal their stories, of course. But if they have a really unique way of wording something or an experience a volunteer had that you can kind of start a conversation with your volunteers of, have you ever experienced this? If so, can you tell me a little bit more about it and kind of help guide that conversation? Keep electronic and paper records of any newspaper articles, newsletter feature, online blog, social media posts, anything that has been used in the past as well. So current and past posts. So this might be going back through a couple of years of a Facebook page or something along those lines if you have the time. Our Make a Difference Monday campaign is a great example of this. So I was able, because of you all, and thank you again for this, making this campaign such a success. But our Make a Difference Monday campaign was able to share 51 volunteer stories throughout the year for the nutrition, SHIP SMP, senior center, volunteer transportation, guardianship, and care through conversation program. I know when you guys all submitted those, you likely liked our page, so you would be able to see the posts. But did you archive those? Do you have those on file as part of your volunteer history and to be able to promote your successes? I hope so. If not, now's the time to go back and try and get them. So those are some people and places that you can look to help collect the stories and the successes that you want to promote. Now, who are we going to share all of this information with? So our initial reaction is to share everything with anybody who's going to listen, right? We need to break that down a little bit more into certain internal and external stakeholders that we can share our stories with. So we do need to kind of target, so to speak, who we're going to share our successes with. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is our internal people to share our stories. So it's always important to have, and I've stressed this on many webinars in the past, that your supervisors and other members of upper management really need to know what you're doing and the successes your program and volunteers are having. We're going to talk a little bit more about buy-in from staff and volunteers next year, but making sure management above you knows what's going on is critical to their support for the program and volunteers in the future. When I first started about 10 years ago in the Aging Network, I heard so many people who were in, I was low man on the totem pole, so literally everybody was above me in the management hierarchy. But so many people would say, we don't need volunteers, they don't do anything anyway. And I just kind of was like, whoa. Actually, I'd speak up and list a handful of things that volunteers do, and the reaction was, well, I've never been told that, so are you sure that that's what they do? Almost like they didn't believe me. So from then on, I became almost, well, let's be honest, I've become obnoxious in how often I talk about the work our volunteers do. So never again, and it's my own personal goal, is never again will I be told by any of my supervisors or anyone above me that volunteers don't do anything to help. Woo, that gave me motivation. So make sure we share everything with that management. Our board of directors, kind of in the same regard. So they need to know a lot about our programs, and they get bombarded with many different things that are going on. And we really don't get to spend all that much time with them throughout the year. Maybe if we're lucky, we get, 4 meetings a year on a quarterly basis. So it's important that we get on the agenda and we talk about our volunteers at every meeting. It doesn't have to be, an hour-long presentation. Maybe you just say, hey, can I get, 5-10 minutes just to do an overview, maybe share an infographic or a flyer, and just have even the little bit, I don't know what that is, even have the smallest amount of time to highlight volunteers would be great. And we're going to talk about another creative way to do this kind of more in the house section, so stay tuned. Oops, keep going too fast. So coworkers, how many of us have ever wondered, and hopefully it's just in the back of our minds and not necessarily out loud, what do our coworkers do exactly? We know that they're working hard and getting things done, but we really have no idea what they actually do. Don't be that person. Don't be the one that your coworkers are thinking, I really don't know what they do all day. So get excited when something good happens and share it with your coworkers as well as your supervisors. So we just gave our 5,000th ride or delivered our 1 millionth meal. That's huge, and everyone on staff should know about it. Talk about data and stories at staff meetings. I know what you may be thinking. No one likes it when people are braggy at staff meetings. Trust me, I have had my fair share of eye rolls, people's faces in their phones, and looks like, really, you're talking again? All we do is hear from you every staff meeting. For all those coworkers that may have kind of a negative reaction to when you talk all the time, there are twice as many who give me words of encouragement, come to me after the meetings and ask, hey, how'd you get that data? What can I do to get similar data to that? How can I help them improve their program? So I can promise you, everyone who I work with knows what I do. So be that person that everyone doesn't have that question in the back of their mind. Volunteers, of course. Some people, maybe in the management and maybe coworkers, may not think that volunteers are internal stakeholders. So my hope is that after this year's series, no one on this call at least thinks that. We've hammered home over and over how volunteers work in equal partnership with staff of our programs. Therefore, we really must consider them as members of our organization. No, they don't get paid. No, they're not there in the office all the time, but they're still an important and valuable part of our internal stakeholder circle. Sharing the program successes and letting them share their personal stories is key to recognition and retention of our program. This is the impact that we talk about almost every month that the volunteers want to know, and it's going to keep them coming back for years to come. In terms of our external stakeholders, the people that we serve need to know that we're there for them and will continue to be there for them as long as they need us. So it's hard for a lot of people to ask for help. And I know I've heard stories, I know you all have heard stories of the guilt or shame that someone feels about calling our program and asking for a meal or a ride or helping apply for an assistance program of some kind. It's then on that initial call, when you hear that tinge of guilt or hesitancy to ask anything, on that first call, sharing that story, sharing the successes, so that they don't feel alone and that it's okay. That they're not the only ones that call in. Maybe one day, and hopefully the help that they need is only temporary, but maybe one day they'll come back and say, you know, you really helped me out and I really want to help you out in return. How can I volunteer for you? How can I help spread the word about your services? And really getting that firsthand account can be really impactful in terms of, you know, sharing the successes of your programs and your volunteers. Potential volunteers, of course, we want to share all of our successes with the people who we may want to attract to help our program in the future. New volunteers hearing a current volunteer's testimonial or reading about a client's experience working with a volunteer in an article or, you know, on your social media or wherever you may have it, can be a catalyst for them wanting to learn more and possibly getting involved. So we definitely want to share our messages with potentially new volunteers. Our community partners are a key external stakeholder as well. We all have regional, local, statewide partnerships. A good example of this are some of the local restaurants that joined the meal delivery program earlier this year. So many successes came out of that partnership, and they need to know the impact that they've had. I know a lot of our senior centers conduct, you know, health fairs and invite local health professionals maybe to do blood pressure screenings, fall prevention screenings, things of that nature. Do those vendors know maybe how many people were there that day, or did you survey the participants to see, you know, did you like the health fair? What was your favorite part? And then do you share those results with the people who were vendors at your fair or a conference or whatever you may have? There's so many examples of collaboration that we have to make sure people that we serve maintain independence and are able to maybe live in their home longer, not be able to go into a nursing home. So all of those stories, all of those successes need to be shared with the people that we partner with. Funders are another external stakeholder. So speaking from someone at an agency that gives money to programs, It's important for funders to know not only the data, and I'm not going to lie, a lot of the information that funders looks at is the data. Did we set a goal? Did we meet that goal? If we didn't meet that goal, why didn't we meet that goal? But we also want the success stories that go along with the numbers. We talked about this, I believe, last month, but we need the stories behind the data. We have been able to communicate not only that we serve so many people, but also why the services we provide make a difference and how they're impacting our people. There we go. Now the what. So in order to know what successes to share, we need to know our audience. So we just talked about so many different audiences, so we kind of know who we're targeting. Each group is going to focus on something different. So while the message is going to stay fairly consistent, you know, we're always going to say, this is what our program, this is what we do, things of that nature. So it's all going to be kind of under an umbrella, so to speak. But the different target areas are going to have different focuses on what may be most important to them. So for example, our management and our funders, they may be more focused on the numbers, making sure our goals are met again. Things of that nature. Where our volunteers and our community partners, on the other hand, may want to focus more on those stories. And the numbers, while important, may be more of an afterthought. So in delivering our stories, I attached this in the email that you all received, and it's also here in the source link below, but the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute has a really great toolkit in using, well, they kind of, it's using their stakeholder and messages handout. So they kind of break up their who into 4 different groups, people who may join your program, neighborhood leaders, funders, and partners. And they take a look at each of those kind of target who's, we'll call them, and ask the questions of what those stakeholders might be interested in, knowing about, and then an example of a message to share. So that story, that success, to share to go along with those questions. I'm not going to go through the handout, you know, verbatim, word for word, or anything like that. You guys have that as a resource, but it's really interesting. For example, your funders, what impact does your program have on the people who attend an event? Your partners, how long will this program run? So if you're looking for a partner, how long does that partner have to commit? Kind of a thing. So go through that form or that resource for me to help get some ideas of what questions you may want to anticipate to address as we're promoting our stories and our successes. Hopefully that'll be a good guide. So the how, this is more of the fun part. So you guys have probably had a lot of creative ways of thinking of how to get your messages out. So here's just a couple of examples that I've either personally seen or I've read about in a few of the sources that you see listed there at the bottom of the screen. So testimonials at board meetings. I mentioned this a little while ago. I'll have a story that one of my supervisors did this at our commission meeting, and it was really impactful. I kind of wish she would do it more often. So she wrote short client or volunteer testimonials, maybe 1 or 2 sentences. You know, it wasn't a huge paragraph or anything like that. Maybe a slip had some program data, some other successes. Either way, she gave out, you know, a handful, maybe 5 or 6 slips of paper, and asked specific commission members that she had relationships with if they would be willing to read them out loud as she called on them during her presentation. And she only had about, 10 minutes to present on the program. And she decided to focus more on the volunteers and their impact. So again, she went to the commission members before the meeting. So this didn't have a whole lot of planning involved. You didn't have emails before the meeting. It was just, I'm presenting in the afternoon, maybe at lunch, I go and I talk to a board member. So when she came to her time to present, she said, now I'd like to ask Commission Member Smith, that's not a commission member, but to stand up and read a testimonial. So there was a different feeling behind the words when it came from a commission member, which is our board of directors, than when a program staff person kind of rattled off our accomplishments. If we can get a volunteer to come, even better. So one of the articles that I read in the volunteer management report has a really similar approach, but they called them mission moments. So every board meeting, they had a specific section of their agenda called mission moments, where people were able to share those successes. This is a terrible name for this. It's kind of strong language, but one of the articles recommended to create a brag board. Again, it's very strong language, so we may want to come up with something else. But the idea is to have maybe a bulletin board, as you can see on the screen, or some kind of display of volunteer activity available for all to see. So this is probably, if you want to do it in your office, is most effective in the lobby area. So as visitors come into your agency, all the information would be there and available. They're waiting for an appointment. They have something to read and look at. That's kind of fun. So newspaper articles, photos, thank you notes, social media posts, basically anything that shows what volunteers for your organization are doing should be on the board or the display, or however you're able to do that. So a person who comes in, for something very unrelated to volunteering may be inspired to become a volunteer. This concept can also be adapted to an outreach tool. So maybe you have a booth or a table at an event or a health fair or an expo, and maybe you have one of those trifold displays. So we can make it more eye-catching. Instead of someone having to look down on the table, it's kind of popped up right there for all to see. So have something similar, not only as a display in your office, but something that you can travel with you as you go out to the community. Another really creative way that I thought about sharing and promoting our program and volunteer successes from the resources was going back again. We just went through our history and we found all these great pictures and articles and everything like that. What if we put them all in a scrapbook or maybe a nice binder or something along those lines, and have it on display or have it available for everyone to see? So when you go to that board meeting and you want to do a testimonial, I appreciate your time. We've actually put together a scrapbook and I'm going to pass it around. So if anyone wants to see what our volunteers are doing, they can flip through a few pages. Or, we're about to have lunch, after you eat, if you want to come over to the table, I'll be there with our scrapbook and I can tell you some stories based on the pictures that they're looking at or something along those lines. This is also a great thing to have at orientations and trainings for new volunteers. Talk about a great conversation starter. I know you're here at orientation and you're thinking about possibly volunteering for our program. Let me show you this book, and we'll maybe open to a specific page. Here's Mary delivering a meal to Miss whoever. You don't have to be specific. We want to keep clients anonymous and stuff for HIPAA. But this was really special because it was around the holidays and she got a special gift bag or fruit basket or something along those lines. So it can really give that extra motivation and encouragement to the volunteer to follow through with that commitment and go to training and become a full-fledged volunteer. This also can help remind you and encourage you to do more documentation in real time so you can update that scrapbook. Some of us may not be as creative to do a scrapbook, but hey, you may have a volunteer that loves scrapbooking. My mom is an avid scrapbooker. So if I ever want to do this idea for a program, I'm going to recruit my mom and send her a bunch of stuff and see if she'd be willing to do it for me. Virtual volunteering, doesn't have to come into the office to do it. Some other common strategies that are more traditional kind of things that you think of off the top of your head as you're promoting programs. So have a section of your organization's website that houses these stories and photos. So yes, we have our program information, but do you have a tab that says, program successes, volunteer successes, photos, whatever, like I said, I'm not very good with coming up with catchy phrases or words or anything like that. So I'm sure you can come up with some. some unique titles for that section of your website. Organize a roundtable or a meeting to share program successes and let the volunteers share their successes as well. Use your organization's newsletter. A lot of us have those for a volunteer section. Now, this doesn't necessarily have to be highlighting a specific person. So it could be a group effort. You know, we just had an amazing health fair and we couldn't get it done without the 20 volunteers who came to set up, tear down, make sure our vendors had water and food, escorted participants to certain things, kind of that way. So it's not just highlighting a person, but the entire group. Use social media. We've talked about that. And your traditional media sites like newspaper, radio, TV, things of that nature. So the where. The where and the who, or excuse me, the where and the how are very similar. So I'm going to reiterate some of the things that we've already talked about and add a couple more things. But there are really 5 areas that I saw in the research to really promote your successes. The first one is in person. And yes, those 2 individuals should be wearing a mask and they should not be shaking hands. But you get the concept overall, right? So one of the best ways to share your program successes and stories is doing it one-on-one. So maybe you attend a town hall meeting, or you don't necessarily have to be the speaker. You go to an event or maybe a community partner or someone you're looking to partner with, and you, after the meeting, you're able to pull the, you know, city council member aside, or maybe a member of the Chamber of Commerce aside after the meeting, introduce yourself one-on-one, come prepared with maybe 1 or 2, 3 at the max talking points about the program, and ask that person, I'd love to, you know, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I'd really love to schedule a time to talk to you more about our program and the great things that we're doing in the community. Do you have, here's my card, or can I have your information? I'd love to schedule a time to talk to you. So just getting that little intro into the mind of someone who you think could really help the program, and then build on that. Written materials are not dead. So a lot of our older generations look to that printed material, our newspapers and things of that nature, to get their information. So when looking at doing printed materials, quotes from clients or volunteers are extremely impactful. They don't have to be long quotes. Even if they give you a long quote, maybe you can find a short quote inside that long one. But this can be done through a report. Doesn't have to necessarily be done through a newspaper or anything like that, but it could be your own agency's maybe annual report of your program, or like I said, in the newspapers, or in maybe your organization's newsletter. At a meeting, we talked about this a lot, and like I said, I'm going to reiterate some of the things that we've already talked about, because a lot of this stuff is really interconnected. But talking to a group of people can spread our successes far and wide. So you target an area of the city or the county to do a presentation maybe. Photos, data, testimonials should always be part of your presentation, even if you're not presenting on recruiting volunteers. So an example, if you're doing an A, B, C, and D's of Medicare presentation, maybe you're with the SHIP SMP program, there should always be a few slides, maybe at the end of the presentation for volunteer recruitment, and you include those successes. Or definitely you want to include the successes of your program throughout the presentation. We were able to help people avoid over $4 million of unwanted, unneeded prescription drug costs. That's going to be a really attractive number to some people who are thinking, do I really want to use their service? Yeah, I think I do want to use their service. Traditional media. Don't underestimate some of the traditional outlets that we still have access to, like radio and TV. Inviting TV stations to an event you have, or inviting them to join you for a ride or a meal route. A ride, like for the My Ride program, or a meal route is a great way to share stories from multiple perspectives. Of course, there's a lot of steps to that, I'm sure, that you may not want a client on TV and whatnot. But something along those lines is a great way to promote the program. Many of our rural communities have a strong connection to the radio. So asking a volunteer to join you on a radio show is a really good strategy as well. Oh, I just got a message saying that I got a photo of a volunteer with a rider from this past Tuesday. That's exciting. So the pictures, perfect. I love pictures. So anyone who wants to send pictures, I will help you keep an archive. All the pictures that we've had going throughout the year, you all may have seen for Thanksgiving, I kind of did a collage of a lot of the photos that we had for the Make a Difference Monday campaign. So even whatever you send me, I do my best to try and use to promote our volunteers across the state. So perfect, keep it coming. And lastly, for the where, I am not an expert on how to use social media by any means. I have a couple social media accounts, but I don't really know if I'm using them right. But overall, social media can be an extremely valuable tool. So videos are probably more popular than many of the posts that we do on our platform. So that's not to say don't ever post anything. But ask a volunteer if maybe they'd be willing to do a short video, like a day in the life sort of campaign for one of their volunteer shifts. And the videos don't have to be long, maybe even less than a minute. So kind of an idea that I came up with or had in my head. This is more for a meal route, so I'm sure it can be adapted to many other things. But say I'm a volunteer, I turn on my Instagram or Facebook or whatever it is. Hey everyone, I just signed in and I was greeted by our amazing coordinator, Mary. Say hi, Mary, get Mary involved. Next stop, getting the meals. Then I end my video. And I start a video again, 10, 15 minutes later or whatever. All right, here are the meals. Looks like spaghetti, a side salad, some garlic bread, a cookie for dessert. Now I'm hungry, but I have 6 stops today, so let's get started. End video. They just have to be small little snippets. And then, I start the video again, just finished half of my deliveries, and I have to say the smiles on these people's faces who get these meals really melts my heart every time. I know what I'm doing is making their day brighter. Now on to finishing my route. End video. Start up again. Well, everyone, my people have happy bellies. I'm back at headquarters. I signed out. I reported my time. Everyone who I work with here is amazing. They never hesitate to help me when I need it. I can't thank these folks enough. That's all for my shift today, but I'll be back next week to help this great cause. End video. Just little itty bitty snippets, something like that. College students, high school students, they're going to be all about doing this. They love posting videos and things to their social media. So maybe it's a way to get a younger generation involved in getting some promotion that way. Or you have maybe one of your older volunteers isn't all that familiar with social media, but they want to be a part of it. So hey, get a team together and see if you can do a day in the life of a volunteer pair. All right, the last question to address is the when. Speak up as often as you can whenever an opportunity arises. So talk about your successes as many times as you can throughout the year. However, if you make it a regular thing, have something new every time. You don't want to share the same stories over and over again. That's when people, eye roll you and stuff. So if you don't have anything new to report, it's okay. You don't have to do it every time. You want to do it as often as you can. But if you don't have anything new, come prepared the next time and speak up at the next meeting. So try and share as often as we can. After a big event, if you've been planning something for so long, you put your heart and soul in it, or it was your busiest time of year and you've had time to process everything, you got to breathe for a minute, share some of the exciting results. We completed a drive-through health fair and were able to distribute over 250 packets of information and food boxes to our senior center participants. We just finished our annual volunteer conference and over 150 50 volunteers from across the state attended to get update training before our busiest time of year. Those are huge accomplishments that deserve for everyone to know. The new year's coming around. Meetings are getting scheduled. Everyone's trying to pack their calendars or get on. I shouldn't say pack their calendars. No one really wants to pack their calendars. But people are trying to give advance notice. Hey, don't forget, save the date, things of that nature. So we talked about meetings a lot during this presentation, but be sure as meeting comes through your inbox and you think, oh, this is a really great avenue for me, make sure you get on that agenda. Minimally, I would say make sure you share your program and volunteer successes on an annual basis. That's really minimum standard. You really need to do it way more often than on an annual basis. But, maybe you're new to the program, you're still going back through your history, you're still kind of learning the ropes. Annually is not bad to start off, and then you can grow on that as more experience comes. But it can be at the end of a calendar year, or maybe it's at the end of a grant cycle after you've had time to process all of your data. So if you decide to do it one time a year, it's important to share with everyone that we discussed in the who section. And use as many of the hows and the strategies that we talked about that you can. Speaking of promoting on an annual basis, I have a new exciting report that I want to talk to you guys about that kind of ties in well with this. So we talked about all of our W's and H's. So I have a plan, and I've been approved by my directors, and a lot of the research suggests doing an annual report of some of the important way is a great important way to promote your program is doing an annual report. What I'd like to create, and I'm going to create, is a volunteer impact report for all of our programs. So many of you know about the 2020 volunteer campaign that we started at the beginning of this year. It was our goal to recruit or have throughout all of our programs 2,020 volunteers in the year 2020. Well, we've had 3,080 volunteers who've reported over 93,000 hours of service. So I would say that's a huge success. And there's a lot more data that still needs to be reported, and we really got off to a great start, and it's only going to improve from there. So we have this really important data and valuable stories, but we really don't have anywhere to put it. And you all may have plenty of places that you put this, but as a state unit, kind of a statewide data bank, we don't really have anywhere that we showcase all of our programs in terms of this data. So what I want to do is create a volunteer impact report on an annual basis that's going to highlight not only our volunteer efforts, but our program successes and impacts as well. So we want the report to, as best we can, reflect a year, a calendar year. So we're going to look at January 2020 to December 2020 with the hope of having the report available and created by April 2021. Now, we may be able to be flexible on that January 2020 to December 2020 because I know a lot of our programs have different grant years, or they maybe go on a fiscal or a state fiscal year. We can work with that. This is just kind of the basis, the roots of the idea. So this will give us the first 3 months of 2021, kind of everyone has the chance to finalize their data and really get a lot of their stuff to me so we can highlight them. So this report is going to have multiple components, and it's going to be a statewide overview. But the statewide overview is going to be for every program that we have. So we have about 12 statewide programs that have a volunteer component. So every program is going to have a specific section. So it's going to have, a simple program overview, the number of people that we serve, the services provided for the program. So meals, rides, people counseled, people visited. It'll be customized to that program. The number of volunteers, the number of volunteer hours that were dedicated. Volunteer demographics, if we feel like that's appropriate. If we don't feel it's appropriate, it's not a requirement. Pictures, the stories, the testimonials, a section about how COVID has impacted the program and the volunteer effort. How to volunteer, who are we going to contact? Is new volunteer recruitment on hold? some programs haven't been able to recruit new volunteers because of certain COVID measures. And where can they go to find more information? We're also going to reach out to First Lady Lee and see if she'd be willing to, share a letter, write a letter after we share the data with her as kind of an encouragement. It's a great way to recruit new volunteers as we look to the future, and definitely a great way to highlight our program. Our TCAD communications team is on board and is going to help with the format of the report, so it's a little more eye-catching, maybe with some infographics and layouts. So I did a picture on the screen here from 2009. This is for our county-by-county data report. That's, I believe, included in the Tennessee State Plan, or we use a lot of this data in the state plan. But this is, it's a lot of data, but it's more fun to look at than just kind of having bullet points of numbers, right? So it's probably not going to look exactly like this, but this is kind of the vision I have for a lot of our numbers and how to display them. And we're also going to need help from state, regional, and local programs. So I may be reaching out to many of you to help with data and stories and testimonials. We really have a lot of this already archived. However, we may have a few gaps that need to be filled. So we might be looking for your guys' help in that regard. So that's a very broad 10,000-foot overview of how I would like to help everyone of our programs across the state promote our successes for both the program and the volunteers. Please feel free to type in any comments, email me any ideas that you have. If you hate it, let me know in a constructive way, not just that I'm stupid. So any input that you guys would like to have, of course, as we do like the overviews and things, we will be looking for many of you to proofread, make sure we have all the highlighted key points that you want. Like I said at the beginning, I know a lot about some programs and next to nothing about others. So I'm not going to pretend to be a subject matter expert on something that I know nothing about. So I will be looking to many of you for help in a lot of the, hopefully not too time consuming of a way, but maybe, hey, do you have time to check over your two pages of the report and make sure you're okay with everything kind of thing. So I have a, this is fantastic comment. And then I have no other comments. So I'm going to go with the whole no news is good news mentality. And the report will be available to everyone. I'll be sure to send it out. And if we need to make copies, hopefully we can get some more professional copies made to send out to people. So to kind of wrap up our ways to promote volunteer successes and program successes, again, I think it's really important for us to go back to our roots and revisit how everything got started. So the history can show us, again, what we need to continue to do, what we might need to adjust to make better, or what we just simply need to stop doing altogether. And as you look through your history, I'd love to learn more about it. Excuse me. Know who our allies are, who are going to either help with promotion, they're going to help us collect the stories, they're going to share the stories for us. So we need to know who our target audiences are. And it really can help take quite a bit of pressure, or the pressure that we feel off of us, if we know who we can help or who we can turn to support, help spread the messages, and we don't feel like, okay, we have all this great data, but I have to go to every single faith-based organization myself and do a presentation, and I'm going to be working weekends and nights. Not necessarily. We have a great support system already built in with our volunteers and our community partners that we can really help delegate a lot of this to make sure we get the most people to hear our stories and our successes. Get as creative as you can. So sometimes a simple display or a bulletin board can be a big influence. Start that archive of your successes, whether that be an electronic file, in that scrapbook or that binder. I'm a firm believer in making sure everything is a paper and an electronic copy, because technology has not liked me this year. So I always have that paper backup, or vice versa, haven't really been able to go into the office to get my paper documents, but I have everything electronically for if I need to change up my office situation. So, but be sure to kind of get creative in ways that you may not have thought about. So with that, I'm going to give you a few updates. We have about 29 minutes left, so as we're talking about new things, feel free to type in any questions or any stories that you have, and I'll be sure to share. But I do want to give you guys an update about the series next year. So thank you all to everybody who submitted some feedback on the 2021 Volunteer Engagement Series survey. I'm excited that the series is going to continue for 2021. So here are a few updates. So we are moving, but we're not moving too far away. So we're actually going to move from the third Friday to the third Thursday of each month. There was an overwhelming majority of responses in the survey that indicated Thursday was the best day. We are going to stay at the same time, 10 a.m. Central to 11:30 Central, so that's 11 Eastern to 12:30 Eastern time. Again, overwhelming majority said that. Back in August, we talked about changing the culture from more of a volunteer management perspective to more of a volunteer engagement perspective. So because of that, I'm going to update the name of the series to the 2021 Volunteer Engagement Webinar Series. So just a slight update, same concept, just a little bit of a different name. And we're also going to adjust time for a 9-month series, rebranding, yes, rebranding. Instead of a whole year series, we're going to do 9 months. So we're going to go January to September. We did notice a relatively significant decrease in registrations in the fall, and I'm sure that is for multiple factors. You know, it's a busy time of year for a lot of people in the fall. We have Thanksgiving and Christmas. So the 24 of you who are on the webinar right now are extremely dedicated. Many of us might be going on vacation the next couple weeks. So I really appreciate you guys spending maybe your last working day of 2020 with me. Very flattering. I'm working on finalizing the calendar. It's actually out for review right now. So I'm hoping by Monday at the latest, I'll have that calendar with all the new topics for everyone to look at and start to register for the series for next year. We have 2 really great guest speakers that are on the calendar next year. So our very own Keita Cole from the Southwest Area Agency on Aging and Disability with the Senior Volunteer Transportation Network is going to be doing a presentation for us. And through some of my connections across the country, we have Miss Alex Ropes, who's the Director of Community Services at the Humane Society for Tacoma and Pierce County in Washington State, who's going to be doing a presentation for us. So I'm excited to get a few different points of view, and you guys are probably excited to not have to listen to me for a couple months and get some new perspectives. So for anyone who may be disappointed about the changes, whether it be the date or you're really hoping that the series would be moved to the afternoon instead of the morning, we are still going to continue to record the webinars, and we're still going to post them to the same Tennessee Commission on Aging and Disability YouTube channel. So if these changes kind of affect your ability to watch, you're still going to be able to have access to the information and the training via the YouTube channel. Hopefully everyone can still listen live. I think we get a lot more with the interaction and things at the live webinar. But thank you all so much again for your support with this series and the encouragement for it to continue. It really, really means a lot to me. This is something that I wanted to do a couple years ago, but didn't have the time. So I'm really glad that you all have enjoyed it and that it gets to continue. I told you earlier that 2020 was a very successful year, which is why I want to do that volunteer impact report. Yes, very frustrating, stressful, and unpredictable year. But in terms of our volunteer efforts, you can see kind of the data coming up on the screen here. I think we should all give ourselves a huge pat on the back and a few days off, if you're able to. But while the data on the screen only really reflects a portion of the volunteers throughout our program, we can feel inspired knowing how much these 3,081 individuals have done to help the people that we serve. So just to give you some examples to help you with that inspiration going into 2021, these volunteers have completed 17,732 rides through the Senior Transportation Program. And of course, these numbers that I'm about to rattle off, we're still in 2020, right? So these numbers are going to continue to increase, continue to grow because the year's not over yet. But just think over almost 18,000 rides in a year. I can't even do fast math to figure out how many rides that is in a month. These volunteers have helped to counsel 116,659 people on Medicare and helped them avoid $4.2 million in prescription drug costs. Huge. Another big example, well, let's play high-low, maybe, if anybody wants to open up their chat box and play. How many meals, home-delivered meals, congregate meals, how many meals do you think were delivered so far in 2020? And this is really looking at January to September. 500,000, higher. Anybody else want to take a guess? I don't have any polls, so this is how we're going to do interaction. 1 million, higher, keep going. $2 million, higher, getting closer. Oh, we got a couple 2 million. So the grand total, and thank you for those of you who participated, 2,247,629 meals. So they were between Marianne and Keita and Sheila. You guys were closest. No prizes, sorry. But that's huge. And that's really only looking at January to September data. So there's still 3 more months of meals to deliver. So Sandra, your 5 million estimate, I guarantee we're going to get closer to that. Marianne, your 2.5 million, I think we're going to even exceed that one. So amazing, amazing. And there's so many more examples that I cannot wait to include in that volunteer impact report. A couple of training opportunities I just wanted to let you guys know about that are coming up. One's a new one that I found out about, and the other one's a reminder from something that we talked about last month. But the first one is the Tennessee Conference on Volunteerism and Service Learning that's organized through Volunteer Tennessee. Some of you may have attended this conference in the past. This may be a new thing that you guys just found out about. So the conference is usually in person in Franklin, Tennessee, which is in Middle Tennessee, but it'll be virtually this year from February 7th to February 9th. Bonus, this is free, a free conference. Sponsored by Volunteer Tennessee. So they don't have the sessions confirmed yet, so the topics aren't released. I believe they recently finished accepting session applications. So I'm sure that the sessions are going to be coming up soon. But January 31st is the final day to register. I've included the link. So in the email that you all were sent before the PDF, you should be able to click the link in there and get to the registration site. I've attended and presented at this conference in the past, and I thought there were some really, really valuable sessions. So if you have the time, if your calendar is open, I would encourage you all to take a look and participate in this conference if you're able to. Of course, ask supervisors, make sure everything's tied up in a pretty bow to make sure you don't get in trouble. Second, we talked about this last month. The Council for Certification in Volunteer Administration does a Certified Volunteer Administrator exam. So this is an international certification for volunteer management, kind of one of the only certifications dedicated to volunteer management or administration. So they do have 2 exam windows. So this is really a self-study exam, and you can take it in the spring or in the fall, and it's the first 2 weeks of April and the first 2 weeks of October. I will be sitting for the exam in April. For more information, there's a lot of detail that goes into this. You can go to the website there, get more information, but they also have a webinar coming up on January 25th that you can ask them questions and they'll kind of go through the process. So if you're interested in that, it is fairly expensive. So look at your budget. It's $350 to sit for the exam. but we did have 3 people who let me know that they wanted to start a study group. So even if you don't want to sit for the exam, but you want to kind of join us in a study group for those of us who want to look at getting certified, I'll have more information on that probably early 2021. After that, I'm getting a little bit of holiday-itis, trying to wrap up a couple things, but I'm ready for a break, as I'm sure many of us are. But just let me know if you're interested, and I'm happy to add you to the list, and we'll get some fun study sessions in 2021. So our next webinar, this is kind of the first announcement. Who's ready? So again, we're moving to Thursdays. I feel like I'm a network television TV show, but our next webinar is going to be Thursday, January 21st, same time, possibly same place. Maybe you're in your pajamas like me at home. By the way, presenting in your pajamas, so much easier than when you get dressed up. We're going to be discussing intergenerational volunteer engagement. So from the surveys, recruitment was #1, as always. So we're going to have a couple, the first 3 webinars, if all goes as I'm planning it well. The first 3 months, we're going to have 3 different perspectives kind of on recruitment, some retention, and some recognition. So 3 months of kind of similar topics, I should say, but they're all going to be from a different perspective. So I'm hoping this is what's going to kick us off, and then Keita's going to talk to us, and then Alex is going to talk to us. So I'm really excited for the webinar series, and I hope you can join us on January 21st. I don't see any questions that have come in, but thank you guys so much, as always, for attending the series. And on behalf of myself, everyone at TCAD, I'm sure all of you, I want to wish everybody a safe, happy, healthy, and joyous holiday season. Hopefully some people will be able to be with families. If not, at least you'll be able to talk with families. Definitely stay safe. I'm still going to be around. I will be taking off the last week of December, so if I don't respond back timely, I will do my best. I'll still be checking emails and things, but don't be mad at me if you don't get a response as quickly as what I normally do. But thank you all again so much. I really appreciate you guys being with me right before Christmas. I know that wasn't easy. But I hope you all are able to get some time to relax and enjoy some time off. I know we've worked super hard this year in 2020, arguably harder than in years past, because we've had to change so much. So hopefully everyone can get a well-deserved break. So thank you all so much again. I'm going to stop the recording and I'll hang out if anyone has any questions or want to talk.